Hey, what's up, guys? It's Mike from Two-Headed Giant, where we believe that two heads are better or worse than one. So, today I am going to begin going through the decks that were in the top 8 of the Mythic Championship. That is the new name for the Pro Tour. And so we're going to be doing this one deck at a time, one deck per video, and kind of highlighting and going through what the deck is, what it does. A lot of you guys probably know these from playing on Arena or playing in your local game store, but if you don't, this is what's going on in Magic right now. And we'll talk about how these decks win and what they're all about. So, there were a total of 8 decks. 3 of them were mono blue, including the winning deck. There was an Esper control deck that came in second. There was a Is it Phoenix? Not Is it Drakes, but Is it Phoenix that came in the top 4. We'll talk about that one coming down the pipe. Let's see here. What else? Now, the decks that were eliminated, so basically we've talked about the 3 blue, we've talked about the Is It Phoenix, we've talked about Esper Control, so that's 5 of the 8 decks, and it's only 3 different decks, actually. So the other 3 was Gruul Aggro, there was an Azorius Aggro, which we've seen a ton of lately, so that's no surprise, and then, of course, this deck, which I'm going to hit today. I don't actually have some of the cards from this deck, mainly the Nexus of Fates here, so I figured I would just go through and show you just the full deck list in this format rather than pulling out cards I don't have or trying to show you some other way. So anyway, so Simic Nexus, if you don't know, this deck is all about basically prolonging the game until you get to the point where you can take as many turns as you need to win. It only plays a couple of different win conditions main board, and that is the Hydroid Krasis, which is your creature that can attack. Outside of that, there's really not a whole lot. Like, this deck is going to take a lot of extra turns. So basically, the way this works is it will play not precognitive. It'll play Root Snare here. So you've got 4 of these. So if you're going to take a crap ton of damage to where you're going to die, Root Snare prevents all combat damage, at least that would be dealt that turn. So that is one way that it stays alive. You know, it will play Growth Spiral to help you ramp. It's going to play Blink of an Eye also to bounce creatures or to bounce anything that's going to potentially cause you to lose the game. Search for Azcanta becomes very important in this deck because you want to flip this to be able to search for cards, and I'll get into that later. So the deck is all about drawing cards, and that's why Growth Spiral, both drawing and ramping, is so important. Opt is good for that. Precognitive Perception, also good for that. It wants a couple of counters, so it plays these 3 Sinister Sabotages. So between the bounce, the counter, and the not taking any damage from Root Snare, like, this deck plays a total of 10 cards to kind of protect itself. Outside of that, I mean, I guess that Krasis could potentially get really big in this deck and play some decent defense, but really you're trying to win by swinging out game 1 with this. 4 Wilderness Reclamation, making all your lands on tap. You know, you want as many copies of this as you can get, so you can tap your lands multiple times if you have to, because basically it allows you to play instant speed Nexus of Fate for an extra turn, which puts it back into your deck. The deck really, it also plays 4 Memorial to Genius to draw out cards, so that's another big way to draw cards. So basically the deck wants to keep thinning itself out and keep Nexus of Fate going back in the deck till you get to the point where you have a ridiculously high chance of drawing Nexus of Fate. And if you can flip Search for Azcanta, which becomes very easy with all the cards that you draw and all the instants and sorceries that it plays, mainly instants actually, no sorceries at all now that I look at it, it becomes very easy to flip Search for Azcanta, and then you can search 4 cards deep for that Nexus of Fate. And because you can tap, you only really have to tap, 4 mana during the main phase and 3 during the second phase, or vice versa, to be able to play Nexus of Fate and get that extra turn. Basically, you have to beat this deck very quickly, or to have critical counter spells to stop the things from happening that will prevent you from beating them. So, I don't love this deck personally. It's a very good deck, don't get me wrong, but I really hate Nexus of Fate. It was banned from Arena Best of Ones. I really wish it would be banned otherwise, or, you know, if they would just ban anybody who would play this, I'm not sure. Maybe that would be a better fix. If we could just ban all the people who play Nexus of Fate, and I'm just kidding. If that's you, I'm kidding. You're not the devil. But anyway, so this is the deck, and then, you know, looking down to the sideboard, if you get into control matchups, Nezahal is a really nice win condition. The fact it can't be countered draws you cards, and you can... This deck draws cards for days, so you'll have no problem discarding 3 cards to exile them to the... What is it? Until the beginning of the next end step. 3 Incubation Druids, if, you know, you're not afraid of him getting nuked off the field, that's probably why it's a sideboard card. It's also a card that, you know, you sideboard this guy in, like I said, you only play 2 Hydroid Krasis. Well, what happens when your opponent brings in Unmoored Ego and they say Nexus of Fate, and the way that you would win the game is more or less gone? Well, this is what you do. You bring in another Krasis, you bring in a couple Biogenic Oozes. You still get tons of mana unless they get rid of your Wilderness Reclamation. You still get tons of mana, you pump out the Oozes like mad. This is, to me, a more fun way to play this deck. Druid of the Cowl and Incubation Druids to ramp, negates for those counter spells. Adzokan Archer. I've not seen this card being played anywhere, but this is being played in this list. Very interesting card to deal with flyers, to be able to stop flyers. Really good to stop a thief of insanity from attacking you, or thief of sanity, but whatever you want to call them. Crushing Canopy is another good way to deal with flyers. Like, the deck doesn't deal great with creatures in general, and especially flyers. I guess it wants to kill them. So this gets rid of an enchantment. So if you're playing the mirror match, or getting rid of experimental frenzies, other Azcantas. There's a number of enchantments out there that are scary, though, so if you're playing against the Gates deck, getting rid of Guild Summit is critical, so that's another way to do that. So, anyway, like I said, I hate this deck. It's just no fun to sit across from and play against. If you come with a plan for it, high-level Magic people, I don't have a problem, I guess, with this being played in high-level Magic, because you can plan for the deck, and you can get out under it and beat it. I just don't think it's a very fun deck to play against once it's doing its thing, and you just sit there and watch somebody play Magic for a while. The best strategies for beating this deck is get out under it fast. I think Mono Blue is situated pretty well against it for the fact that you can counter their Nexus of Fates and their Wilderness Reclamations and the things that make the deck sings, and actually getting, you know, even countering the Root Snare when they think they're going to fog you, then all of a sudden you still get through with the damage. Mono Blue, that's, I think, one of the reasons. It just stops everything, and it runs with extremely efficient mana, and that's why Mono Blue is winning right now. I'm curious to see what uproots that, because nothing stays King of Standard for long. There's always answers and ways to play against things, but with a deck that runs with that low of a curve, it's difficult. I'm curious to see what's going to top it, and as the King of Standard. So anyway, this has been Simic Nexus. This was Michael Bond's deck that he played. He lost in the top 8. I'm trying to remember which deck. I believe the surprisingly Esper Control beat him. Esper Control does not necessarily have a favorable return against this deck, but if it hits its counter spells and its mortifies in the right sequence, then it can definitely get there, and that's what happened today. But, you know, I mean, I think sideboarding becomes extremely important and relevant, and how you play that. It was interesting to see that this lost in the first round of the top 8. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to let us know with a thumbs up. I love hearing what you guys are playing, what decks that you liked from the Pro Tour, or the Mythic Championship as it's now called. And don't forget to subscribe. We love it when you guys are watching our videos. That's why we do this, is to kind of have community with you guys. So the more you guys reach out, the better. If you have any questions about this deck or any of the decks that we go over, don't be afraid to ask them in the comments. And don't forget to share this with your friends. We are growing, and we appreciate your support. So until next time, it's Mike from Two-Headed Giant, and have some fun playing some Magic.